What's good, everyone? A-Rock Oakley, and we are talking set 4, Jump to Lightspeed, and the first leader that stood out to me was Wedge Antilles. So let's take a closer look at Wedge here. We have a 5 deploy leader with a new keyword called piloting. Piloting allows you to take a unit and either play it as a ground unit or attach it as an upgrade to any vehicle, which can be in the ground, which I think that there are some solid options for piloting on the ground currently. But you can deploy him as a leader in the ground as just a vanilla 3/6. Or you can play him as an upgrade, and that gives the vehicle some really strong traits of, stat wise, but also a really good use of the on attack to play another pilot, whether in the ground or onto another unit, which is great. We're still waiting on some more pilots, I feel like, but I think that this is has a lot of potential to do some really, really cool things. So Wedge is dope, super, super good leader. Anytime we see one less, paying less on cards, we need to be kind of clued in on what that can bring. So, um, this is kind of where I've started with the cards that we currently have available. So we're just going to kind of run through most of the new cards and why I would consider some of the old cards to be playing. And I have a ton of options in the sideboard, so we'll run through what we have. I like pairing this with Tarkin Town. There is two ships in particular that I think function very well with Tarkentown, and we can also consider using Daring Raid as a really solid card to be playing, because I think Daring Raid always does well with Tarkentown. So this is one that we should be tossing in the sideboard for sure as a potential card to be playing. But so start off, we want to try and fill out with as many pilots as possible, and I think there's only a couple ground units that we would really consider playing in the deck. One to kind of slow the game down in like an echo-based defender, but two in stuff that buffs piloting. So Fleet Lieutenant might work because we're playing basically a rebel package. Cassian Andor, I think, is always a card we should be considering in any deck where you're playing it, just because of its ability to go into the resource row and then present 3 damage in the later turns. So we'll talk about the first new one. We have 9 Num. This unit gets +1/+0 for each other friendly pilot unit and upgrade. So solid 1/2, not the best stat line, but you're always wanting to play this piloting. And with Wedge's ability, we can play this as a pilot for free. So he can be a pilot on turn 1, 2, 3, any of these turns, and he, you know, on the Wedge deploy turn is where this starts to be really, really good. Is you're able to get, +2 in stats when you attach 9 and Wedge to a similar unit. So this can start to get really, really big, and then that unit is going to demand an answer. So we love to see that. And I don't ever really see a use for playing him on the ground. I guess if you don't think you're ever going to have a vehicle and it's just the last option, but definitely looking to play this on a unit every single turn. If you know it's safe, you're not against Power of the Dark Side or Merciless Contest, or you're not worried about it getting pinged in Tarkin Town, it's pretty safe to play a vehicle on turn 1, put this dude on it, and go for it. So I think this is probably going to be one of the biggest cards for a vehicle and piloting deck to work, is centered around this card. But there's a couple other cards that really help bring it together, and one of those being R2D2. R2. This card is great because it allows you to play this for free. You can play it as a 1/4, which is a solid stat line for a 1-drop on the ground, but you play it for free. That's amazing. Costing 0 to pilot and to basically be an experience token is awesome. And if you're piloting on the same ship as 9 Num, because you can play another pilot with this, even though most piloting is one pilot only unless it specifies, and this helps, you know, go around that rule and allows you to load up and kind of Voltron pretty heavily. So this is great. Functions great with 9 Num. You're never going to be You might be able to play this for free on the ground after a wedge attack on a vehicle when he's piloting, so that can be good. Cassian Andor, we talked about Smuggle, amazing, 3/5 body, great into Tarkin Town deck, so always something we should be considering. I have that as a 2 of, since we're not really doing too much with it. Leia Organa is the other ground unit that I think is fantastic. I'm also getting the Lisa Simpson hands out. Like what? Oh God, we got to look this up. One sec. Oh man, this is way too funny. 3/4 for 3, solid stat line. Restore 1, also great. We want to be healing as much as we can, but where this really shines is allowing you to cheat some actions. Play this, especially on a turn 2. You can restore, which you probably won't be restoring any, but you're going to be buffing that unit gets +1/+0. You can attack with a pilot unit or a unit with a pilot. So you can, use this on a ground unit that is a pilot if you happen to have it. So there gives a lot of versatility. Now, if you don't have a pilot or a pilot unit, she's not great. So you might want to save her for later turns. So she's not always a turn 2 play. If she's your only 2/2 play, obviously we go for that. But hopefully our draws are far better than that. Either way, stat line's great. We want to be dealing with that. So she's great and helps in the pilot synergy and gives it extra reach. And again, action cheating with restore is fantastic. Chewbacca was from the Han Solo constructed deck that they're putting out, and this card is absolutely insane. Um, Both Chewbacca and when he's a pilot gives the text that this unit cannot be defeated or returned to your hand by enemy card abilities. So this helps us circumvent waylays, to power the dark sides, to takedowns, to fell the dragons, to all these things. So they have to defeat the Chewbacca upgrade, which Confiscate and other disabling Fang fighters and so on and so forth can do, but force them to have it. They might not have it in game 1, so if they have it in game 2, you can just play differently. But with Wedge, we can have this be piloting for 2 to give +3/+3 to a unit. That's nuts. Even him, just as a 5/6 on the ground that can't be defeated, demands an answer. So we'll get into some of the extra synergies of what this can really do when you start to load up and Voltron into something. So absolutely nuts. Probably, I mentioned 9 num being the big part of it. This is kind of the huge payoff of, if these two are on different ships, you're talking about a lot of extra damage that's being tossed around, especially if Wedge is on the board. 9 num just is buffing up to 3, maybe 4 with the R2 down. It gets pretty crazy pretty fast, which is dope. So we love to see this, and a card to help in recurring some of our pilots. Say our ship goes down that had 9 num in it. Rogue Squadron Skirmisher ambushing as a 4/6. 4/6 stat line is already great into, doesn't die to takedown, doesn't die to fell the dragon. It's a great unit, and we're bringing stuff back, which is generally going to be ships to pilot again and or pilots themselves. So I think Rogue Squadron Skirmisher is a perfect top end for this aggressive strategy. For the deck. Plus, it's vehicle, and we can pilot this in later turns. So if they have a big Sentinel in space, you might be able to throw a Chewbacca into this Rogue Squadron Skirmisher and hit for 7. Seems good. So lots of options in the later turns. Plus, Wedge can go onto this if you want to delay a turn, which sometimes you might have to do. So keep that in mind. We're running a ton of space units, and hopefully we'll see some more so we can maybe adjust some of these cards. But these are the ones that I think are amazing, and they're great to pilot. Alliance X-Wing trades efficiently. Vanilla ship. This is your battlefield marine in space. It's pretty solid. Could be better, but 2/3 ain't bad. Green Squadron A-Wing. If you've been playing this game, you know how good this unit is, and doesn't defend well, but is your offensive. Let's go get it. That's what A-wings are about. They're fast. They push damage, and it is great. The Gray Squadron Y-wing pairs really well. We're going to talk about our two Y-Wings here. These are what help unlock Tarkin Town. So Gray Squadron Y-Wing, if because we have Tarkin Town, they're less likely to allow you to deal damage to a unit, and they'll choose where it goes, but the Tarkin Town will help clean it up, which is good, and I think that's solid. If not, it's just essentially another Green Squadron A-Wing, which is amazing. So playing this as a 2 of, maybe this will shift out, and again, we might even be able to play a 30 HP base in the future, but I love having the option of Tarkin Town, because if they try and trade into your stuff, you want to be able to trade back by using that. If they ECL something, you want to be able to Tarkin Town it back. But we'll see where the meta goes, because it could get much slower with the 35 HP base that was released recently, and we'll see again as things go. But we'll keep this up to date as we go. Red Squadron Y-Wing plays very similarly, but it's indirect damage, which is unpreventable damage that they get to choose where it goes between their base and their units. They choose each point of damage where it goes. So they can put 2 on this and 1 on their base. They can spread it out however they need to, but this does make Tarkin Town a much more viable option. And this ship is great because if they don't have anything, it's 4 to base. That's great. So it's above what a Green Squadron A-Wing is doing. So this ship is dope. I think it's incredibly good. It goes through shields, which doesn't pop the shield. And this can go on to Lurking TIE Phantom. So indirect damage is kind of nuts in that way. Now, probably one of the most insane cards that we saw released was the Blue Leader. This card is a 3/3 ambush in space, on rate insane, with incredible upside in the later turns where you can, if you have 5 resources, so on the wedge turn, you can clear a space sentinel or ambush this in space, and if it survives, you can pay 2 more and then put it into the ground arena and and have 2 experience go on to that unit, which then presents you're diversifying your threats. You have both on ground and in space, and now they have to answer a 5 attack on the ground, which is pretty nuts. If you order it the other way, you can also just ambush for 5 on the ground. So you get to, this is just such a flexible card and gives you insane potential when dealing with units, depending on what you need. It can be a solid turn 2 play where you can just take out whatever they might be, trying to build up, or clearing the way for your other units. So Blue Leader, very flexible, and at the uncommon slot, this card is just absolute gas. So we'd love to see it. Now, this ship is going to, I think, it's the Millennium Falcon, and get out and push. So you might be able to have this unit deal the most damage in one swing ever in this game. Uh, because think about if you have 9 Num, Chewbacca, and R2 on this, or Chewbacca, Wedge, and R2. We're talking insane amounts of damage with this card, because it gets +1/+0 for each pilot on it, and you can have an additional pilot on it. So you can have up to 3 pilots on this because of R2 being allowing you to play extra pilots. Nuts, absolutely nuts. So this thing can Voltron out of control very, very fast, and end games very quickly. So if this goes unanswered, the game can be yours. So Millennium Falcon is a card we want to see and can open up some insane play lines, because we can just swing for the fences and put them in a state to where the game can just end very quickly. So 3/4 stat line in space for 3, very, very efficient. Yeah, and this thing loves pilots. It gets big really fast. Red 3, incredible card, great card to pilot because it can help protect it, and it gives every other unit in this deck raid 1. And that just, again, helps us close games very, very fast. Wing Leader, if it goes unchecked, we all know games of Green Squadron A-Wing into Wing Leader, 5 to base, that is just efficient Star Wars Unlimited, Rebel, aggro, beats. Like it's super super good. So if anything, I could see this card going down. It's a two of because we are playing so many pilots, and this isn't the best ship to pilot, but it just is. It presents an insane option, and with the Falcon being rebels, and every ship in here being a rebel ship, which I think is where we maybe want to stay. It's just a good card to have access to. Bright Hope. Picking up Leia, I think, is where you want this card to be if you're ever using the Wind Blade, but it's a 2/6 in space, shuts down space, which I think is going to be very important, and doing this is fantastic. So, great ship to pilot because it's got a big butt, and we can make it even bigger with a bunch of the other units that we're playing and the pilots that we're playing. So, very strong. Bright Hope does work and can really extend the game for us. Red Leader is a card that I think can um, can develop this swarm strategy. Now, it's only develops a swarm strategy because of R2. We can play R2 for free and then maybe play Wedge on him, and we get 2 extra X-Wing tokens. Now, X-Wing tokens are not rebels, so that's the one small downside we have here, but they are heroic, so they do get buffed by red 3, and so they're 2/2s, so they have to be answered. So they're just a great, efficient way to kind of spread your damage, and not to mention create more vehicles to be piloted as we get more pilots to put in these vehicles. So this one could potentially bring 2 other vehicles that can add to your pilot's strategy here. So I think red 3 getting the reduction on cost is great. So if you go, you know, turn 1 9 num, you can play this and then play an R2. Or if you have an R2 on your turn 1 play, then you can play this with 9 num, and now you have 3 units, and 2 of them are big, are pretty big, and it gets great. We get to leverage Wedge's ability, and we do some work with this. Now, that's kind of the unit. It's heavy in space, obviously, which it needs to be, but talking about 2 of the best units or events we can be playing in Rebel Assault. Use this aggressively. The moment you have 2 ships, if one of them is piloted, use this aggressively, which is great because we're already, cheating resources with Wedge, which is great. But this presents so much damage on actions. We guarantee stuff before they can exhaust it, defeat it, bounce it. Whatever the case may be, Rebel Assault is probably one of the best cards to see in this deck because we don't have the Leia ability. We're not pinging with Sabine. We're not doing any of that. We just want to Voltron something and guarantee damage, and this can make use of a wing leader that came along with it, or the red 3 that's giving it a buff, or whatever the case may be, or if it's a we're pumping with red leader and one other unit. It's just nuts. Just think about if put something, if you have a big Falcon and then you wedge onto another ship and then you play Rebel Assault. The amount of damage that can represent is backbreaking. No matter what HP base they're playing, that can claw you back into a game and maybe put you in for a cause I believe in range, whatever the case may be. Insane card, and a big reason why I think we're going to be really leaning on the Rebel synergy here because I just don't see any other reason not to. So, at the current look of things, I could see some of the numbers going down. I don't think I would, wing leader being one that I could pull down. For a cause I believe in, I could see dropping down because we might not need it. Might just be have to go to 2. I could see red leader going down to 2 because we don't always want to be going for that play line of going wide. We might just want to super Voltron into something. The gray squadrons, your X-Wings can all kind of adjust as you start to work with it. Cassian could potentially go down as well if you don't have a reason to be throwing something down in space. There is a new card that I actually think I want to put in, which is our boy BB-8. This is a recent one. It doesn't have the Rebel packet, Rebel synergy, but it is just an aggression, which is in our colors, pilot that we can play for free. You could consider playing Poe with this card because When you play it as an upgrade, for 1, for 0, you can ready a Poe for 2 resources. Now, we'll see what other resistance, traits we get, so maybe we could lean into that, which means we might be off of like the wing leaders and the rebel assaults, but I just don't see it. But right now, BB-8 Happy Beeps is something I think we're going to be considering as a 2 of in the main, uh, and I would probably drop 1 Leia, and I would probably let's drop hmm, let's go with the Gray Squadron, just to give us a solid another unit to play as a pilot. Now, he doesn't change the traits of the ship, so if you put this onto a Rebel ship, it is still a Rebel, which is great. So BB-8 was a spoiler from today, the 27th of January, and it's a solid one, and definitely one we want to keep in mind if we're really needing a bunch of pilots. Now, we could see other pilots that maybe fit the Rebel synergy better, and we can consider playing those instead of this. But having the ability to play any pilot for free in our colors is something we want to be looking at. So now on to a bunch of cards that I would consider for the deck and to keep in mind as you continue forward. So Metal Ceremony, just an insane card. Since we're not necessarily going as wide, it doesn't necessarily work. And we have R2 to essentially be our Metal Ceremony. So not on this one. I mentioned Daring Raid earlier. Plays well with Tarkin Town. Sick card. Heroic Sack. If you Voltron something, this will close games and can give you reach. It can filter. Wonderful card. Probably one of my favorite cards from set 1. Spec Force Soldier isn't a guarantee you're going to need this thing in the side, because if they wall you up with a Bright Hope of their own or a Concord Dawn, and or your Black Sun, you're trying to swing for the fences with a big Voltron unit, pay 1, take away that Sentinel, force them to have the answer after that. So can be great. Timely Intervention, seeing that we don't have ECL, this is a card we want to be looking at as a potential, but I think with Blue Leader being our ambush kind of, removal spell, we might not need this or have space for it, and especially with we're on 4 cause, it could be better to switch the 4 cause out, and who cares about the heroic tag, and we can just play, the daring raids and the timelies. But while we're at it, I think we should try and guarantee the damage off of 4 cause for at least in this early testing. Battlefield Marine, just a great unit if you need to have stuff in space on the ground. Sabine, similar to Battlefield. If I had to choose between these two, I'd probably take the Battlefield Marine just because it defends better. So when they attack into it, you're probably taking it down with it. But Sabine popping shields and guaranteeing damage and maybe being unattackable is absolutely relevant. So these are always options if you're in these colors to be thinking about. Admiral Akbar can function very similarly to the Spec Force Soldier. If we do happen to go wide in space, this could just blow something up. But if we are Voltroning, it might not be enough. So that's why he's just in the maybe board at the current status of things. But he does play well with Tarkin Town as well, so that's very solid. Echo Base Defender to help out on the ground, which we might need to do sometimes because decks might shift and ignore space and they can outrace you on the ground sometimes. We don't know where that'll be. There's still so much testing to be done, but excited to see. And this is just a very solid Rebel unit to be playing. Fleet Lieutenant we mentioned before. Since we're on the pilot vehicle strategy, I like Leia more in this right now. 3-4 body is a little bit more resilient than the 3-3. The Restore 1 can be very, very relevant with the 25 HP base, so that's where we're at here. Yeah. General Dodonna, just an anthem effect that we could make use of, which is great. I like Adelphi a lot in this as a card because it can cheat actions, it can be a vehicle, but it just doesn't. I think at 5 resources we don't want to be playing this. We want to be doing other things with our resources, whether that's a pilot plus wedge or rebel assault and into a 4 cause. Things like that is what we really want to be doing at the moment. Wedge Antilles, the unit, if this came out earlier than 5 resources, I would love to see this card being played more. But I think it coming out on 5, it just doesn't help immediately impact the game in the way we need to. You'd rather just be playing Dodonna on the turn before, and then following up into your wedge into making things really big. So, but I definitely want to keep this in mind because vehicles being able to ambush with +1/+1, there's some pretty crazy strategies there that we can make use of. General Recon is another card like Echo Base Defender that we can use to shore up the ground for a turn, which is amazing, and he can buff our Bright Hopes to make them very, very big. Coming out on 6, again, I think the Rogue Squadron Skirmisher just is better to recoup some ships or pilots and keep pushing instead of slowing the game down. We're trying to push the aggressive front, and we just want to kind of go for that. Guerrilla Attack Pod, Rebel Vehicle, pretty good, can help close games. U-Wing, if we need to find more ships, but the only reason I don't like this is because you're going to see a lot of pilots off of your U-Wings. So I just don't see this being a U-Wing deck because we want those pilots in hand to then play them onto units, not to play them as units. So not high on that, but I would be high on something like Home One. And there's no reason not to have Home One in the side. If the games are going to go long, Rogue Squadron Skirmishers are going to help. Home One's going to bring stuff back. You're going to be able to do a lot of work with this card as a great sideboard option for the long games because you're going to be able to apply a bunch of damage. This can get you back into games. This can, give you something to pilot again. And yeah, so this is kind of where I'm at. I was happy to see the BB-8 spoiled, which is super, super cool. But yeah, let me know what you guys think down below. If there were any ships or cards that I missed, I might have. So outside of that, I am anxiously waiting and will continue to update with some shorter videos as we kind of get through this and we keep updating Wedge, Wedge Aggression, Wedge Tarkentown. But I'm so excited about this leader. He's been one of my favorite Star Wars characters. So this is a fun one. But other than that, again, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know down below what you think, and if you think that this deck has legs and can do some work when Set 4 drops in March. Thanks for watching, everyone. May the Force be with you. Stay awesome.